Yeah, and I think there are elements of like the Legion Surrender Priest that they could bring back, but they just got to be careful, right? Like the only reason that worked is because there was a broken artifact trait that gave us scaling dot damage the longer we were in void form, which is just insane to balance, right? But adding something into the kit that's like, um, like ramping haste inside of void form, or um, I've pitched the idea of like void torrent extending our void form again to kind of harken back to that playstyle. But yeah, I mean it's kind of hard to bring that playstyle back without it being ridiculously unbalanced. Yeah, so the Legion Priest is a pretty different form of everything. So uh, basically, you didn't have any insanity spenders, so you didn't have Devouring Plague, you didn't have Searing Nightmare. Instead, when you popped Void Form, you started draining insanity. So the entire rotation was you fighting against your insanity draining by pressing spells that generate insanity, like Void Bolt, Mind Blast, etc., to help sustain you through that. And you drained more insanity the longer you were in Void Form, so it got harder to do that over time. Um, Void Torrent paused that insanity drain. Um, yeah, that's like the basics of what that was. And the longer you were in void form, up to 50, I think, 50 stacks, so 50 seconds, your dots ticked harder. So, so basically, you were like tracking the time to death on the current mob, and you were like, okay, I think the boss is gonna die in a minute and a half here. I'm gonna press my surrender void form, right? And if you guessed wrong, you died, basically. Okay. Yeah, so you see you're all about your insanity bar. Okay, so you pop Void Eruption, and then you can Void Torrent, which pauses the drain. You see it's not draining during this time. And the rotation's like pretty similar, right? You're oh, so this was the dispersion crazy tech to pause your drain. So you'd Mind Blast, I mean the rotation was the same, right? You Void Bolt, Mind Blast, Mind Flay, right? Man, my UI was a little cringe back then, I'll be honest. And you would have to use like Shadow Fiend at the right time, Powdered Infusion at the right time. So the whole thing was like based on the timing of the fight, right? Because the important thing is, you know, you could only keep this going for so long. So in this example, I lasted for 2 minutes and 10 seconds. You could only go so long, right? Oh, you could also cast while moving during this whole thing, and you would get Tendril procs that would give you Insanity during this time. So you see, like you're really fighting with the bar here. So I've been in it for about a minute now, and you really start to fight with your drain. And Void Torrent was kind of the moment of pausing, where it's like, holy shit, like I need to take a breath and kind of fix your drain, right? You see how dicey it gets here? So you're kind of like you're just skirting the line, and then you kind of have to like eventually be like you hit your oh shit buttons, which is like you hit Power Infusion, Shadow Fiend, that kind of stuff. Okay, so then I hit Power Infusion, catches you up a little bit, right? Do you see how fast everything is going? Because you have so much. So at this, my haste is over here. You're getting ramping haste as well. So I have 220% haste. This is no lust, by the way. Okay, so Power Infusion's gone. Okay, so now I'm using Dispersion to hold myself off. Barely clip it, and then I get my Void Torrent off. There you go. And that's 130 seconds. There it is. And then you die at the end of it. Right, so basically the whole thing was you would have to time this to be like, so like you'd be like, okay, I know that I can do a 2 minute surrender or whatever. So you'd be like, okay, my time to die says, hey, look, the boss is gonna die in 2 minutes. You're safe to use it, right? Yeah, that's how that worked. Yeah, and what Angel's saying was all like this had a lot of downsides. One of them being, if you had a lot of latency, this was like way harder, right? Let's see, did I do it? I didn't record all of my stuff, but did I use surrender on this fight? I must not have. That's just a 42. Yeah, I didn't use surrender. So I didn't record as much because I was just starting out. Because by the time it only lasted pretty much Emerald Nightmare, and like you kind of used it. On some of these fights you could use it. I know Botanist was one of them. Yeah. Yeah, it didn't last very long. It was a pretty quick thing. Yeah. No, I don't have any clips from Xavius that I know of. Let me see if I have. I'll check my. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't as involved, you know, in things then, so I wasn't like a content creator or anything at the time, so I like didn't have any of that stuff, right? But yeah, I mean, it was a pretty different time. I mean, yeah, so I think like a lot of people liked some of that playstyle, so the question is like, that playstyle A was unhealthy for the game just because the way it was balanced, it was either broken, right, or not worth using. So like, how do you, and obviously Blizzard agreed, which is why they removed it, right? But like, how do you put and leave something in the game that operates like that, right? Like that's so volatile for the game, right? To have that. So they ultimately ended up having to remove it, right? So because like none of us would have done something that was that rotationally demanding if it wasn't good, right? So that's the struggle with a playstyle like that, you know?